The mode dial features a variety of exposure settings ranging from completely automatic to manual modes. This gives you flexibility and creative control over the exposure, shutter speed, and depth of field settings on your camera. As you become more familiar with these concepts and principles, you will improve your ability to capture the best pictures possible depending on the camera configurations you're shooting in. Knowing how these settings work together will help empower you to get the look and feel you want in your pictures. We'll talk about these concepts in depth later in the DVD. We're going to explore what Nikon calls the digital vari-program shooting modes. Understanding how the camera settings change in each of these shooting modes will help you experience how your camera makes it easy to capture great pictures in all kinds of settings. Before we explore camera settings in the shooting modes, let's take a quick look at the shooting information button again. Press this button anytime you'd like to view the camera settings. You'll become more familiar with the information found here as we continue through the DVD. The settings that are most affected in the various shooting modes are aperture and shutter speed. These displays provide you with a visual indication of what's happening with the aperture and shutter speed. Again, aperture controls how much or how little light the lens lets in, and the shutter setting controls how fast the shutter releases. We'll cover these settings in depth later, but it's a good idea to get a feel for the settings the camera is changing in each of the shooting modes. The shooting information display is a great way to better understand camera settings while you're shooting. It's also important to note that the Nikon D60 comes equipped with the answer key. You can become more familiar with each setting by scrolling through the menu options and pressing the button with the question mark, the answer key, to learn more. You have already used the full auto mode. The next mode setting is the flash off mode. Use this mode in places where flash photography is prohibited or inappropriate. This mode is effective for candlelight scenes or if you want to create cool streaks of light for creative effect. When using this mode indoors or in low light, be sure to steady your camera with a tripod. The next mode is the portrait mode. To shoot in this mode, rotate the mode dial to select it. Use this mode when you want the subject to be in focus and what is behind the subject to have a soft focus. In portrait mode, the aperture is set wide open. The aperture is controlled inside of the lens. An open aperture indicates that the lens will let all the light it can into the shutter. In portrait mode, the camera will automatically adjust the shutter speed as necessary to estimate and set a proper exposure. This blurs the background with a shallow depth of field. The next shooting mode is the landscape mode. In the landscape mode, the camera will choose settings that are opposite of the portrait mode. Landscape mode sets the aperture for a very small or closed down opening, creating a very long depth of field. Then the camera will adjust the shutter speed as necessary to achieve a proper exposure. This will give you a sharp focus in the background as well as the foreground. Shutter speeds in this setting can get pretty slow, so steady your camera to make sure everything stays in focus. The child mode is next on the dial. Use this mode for taking snapshots of children. Clothing and background details will be vividly rendered, while skin tones are given a softer, natural finish. The camera selects the focus area containing the closest subject. To capture fast-moving subjects, select the sports mode. When shooting in sports mode, the camera sets a fast shutter speed to help freeze the action. A telephoto lens is a great investment if you want to shoot great action pictures. A telephoto lens helps you capture the action from across the field. This setting is great for outdoors in heavy light or bright conditions. In this mode, the flash will not fire, so when taking sports shots indoors or in poorly lit conditions, it might be good to use a different mode. The next shooting mode is the close-up mode. This shooting mode is used to capture flowers and other small objects that are physically close to the camera lens. Use this at the lens's minimum focusing distance. The final digital vari-program mode, the night portrait mode, is designed to capture your subject and obtain a natural-looking exposure in the background. In order for the subject to be well lit, the flash will fire, and in order for the background to be in focus, the aperture is closed down a bit. The shutter will open for a relatively long period of time, so hold the camera very still or support it with a tripod. If you have difficulty getting a sharp focus in this mode, try using full auto mode to see which setting helps you get the best looking picture. If additional lighting is required for correct exposure in portrait, child, close-up, or night portrait modes, the built-in flash will pop up automatically when the shutter release button is pressed halfway.